Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Opeth Gear Detective. This is the second episode, and in the first episode, we looked through the Blackwater Park documentary together. We found some really interesting still images, and we got an idea about which gear they might have been using on the record. To make a long story short, it seems like that the gear that is listed on the Opeth website is actually the gear that was used on the record. A lot of the gear we found evidence of existing in the studio at the time of the recording. But the big question that we were left with was which cabinets were used. And me being me, I couldn't let such an important question go unanswered. So, as another really good guitar YouTuber would say, I did the work. I went online and I started searching for evidence about what cabinets could be there. One very interesting thing I noticed when I put this documentary together, this presentation that I'm about to show you, is the fact that you can see this Marshall cabinet right here in the middle, and that's for sure a Marshall cabinet. But over here on the right side, there's actually a black box with a gray front, and it's about the same height as a Marshall cabinet. And I wonder if that could be an ENGL cabinet. It would be an ENGL cabinet with black corners maybe, because we're not seeing any metal corners here. We see ENGL Savage down here. That was the amp that is pretty well documented as being on the record. But I was so curious. Last time I thought maybe this Marshall cabinet has vintage 30 speakers in it or something like that. But again, I was just guessing. So, like I said, I did the work and I took a deep dive into the internet to see if I could find more information. Spoilers ahead, we get some information. But let's take this from the top. So, the best way to start, or where I started my search, was of course that I went to the Studio Fredman website and I looked around. And they have this fairly recent photo of a Marshall cabinet, an ENGL cabinet, and a Vox cabinet. The other cabinet down here seems like a more modern present-day cabinet, but you know, Marshall, ENGL, and Vox. And these cabinets could be the ones that we have found in the documentary. There is this Vox cabinet with the hanging front grille. There's a Marshall cabinet, and maybe, hey, look at this ENGL cabinet. Maybe that's not the one. I'm not completely sure, because this seems to have a black grille, whereas, spoiler, whereas this one seems to be gray. But you don't know. So, but the corners match at least. They are black. So I thought to myself, okay, well, what would be a good source of gear that was in Studio Fredman around that time that Blackwater Park was recorded? And I started looking for documentaries that were shot at Studio Fredman. And I found this one. It is from the 11th year anniversary of At the Gates recording Slaughter of the Soul. And I think it's pretty amazing, because you can see a Marshall cabinet, an ENGL Savage, and in the background you can see a Vox cabinet that has a slightly hanging front grille, and you can see what appears to be an ENGL cabinet down here. How cool is that? And if you ask yourself if these are the same cabinets that are there present day, you can check this little spot in the bottom of the Marshall cabinet. You can see the slightly hanging front close of the Vox cabinet, and you can go back and say, okay, there's a little spot in the bottom of the Marshall cabinet here, that's the same spot. And the hanging front grille of the Vox cabinet, here. And I think we also see that on the Blackwater Park documentary. I didn't prepare that today, but you can go back and check my previous video on that if you want to really, really confirm it. about the ENGL cabinet, I don't know when they started making black fronts on them, but today let's just say that it's potentially the same. Hey, so I'm just editing this video. I think I had a momentary lapse of confusion when I shot it, because the answer is very, very simple. Fredrik Nordström has two ENGL cabinets, one newer, which is black, one older, which is gray. And you can see this gray one in this documentary that I am just about to show you. And this is also the cabinet that we will see more of later in the video, and potentially the cabinet that was on Blackwater Park. So let's move on from here. Then I found another very interesting documentary. This is about the making of Obscura's album called A Valediction. And I really would recommend that you go and watch this documentary to just get in the head of Fredrik Nordström a little bit. Because he seems to be working on new guitar tones every time he works on an album, or at least he seems to be dialing things in for the need of the artist. He seems to use the same gear a lot, which is good because gives us smaller room to search here. But it's very, very good. And to explain all of this, there's a guy called Robert Kukla, who's a technical engineer on the record here. And I thought to myself, who is he? So I looked at the internet and I found out that he is running something called Obsidian Recording Studio, which just so happens to be inside the secondary control room of Studio Fredman. And I thought to myself, why not try to write Robert? I have tried to write Fredrik in the past, but I think Fredrik gets a lot of requests and questions about his gear. I think Fredrik must have sold a lot of ENGL Savages through the years, for example. But long story short, I wrote Robert, and Robert wrote me back, and he said, hey, he is actually also a big Opeth fan and really into the records that were done at Studio Fredman. And Robert was cool with talking to me. So that's fantastic. And I want to start with the bad news, which is, of course, a guy like Robert, who is so passionate about this kind of stuff, he will, of course, ask Fredrik, what did you do on the album, and so on and so forth. And the sad part is that, Blackwater Park was recorded 20 years ago, and Fredrik Nordström is not a big note keeper. And in a recent interview, Mikael Åkerfeldt also said that some days they worked in the studio and Fredrik Nordström was not around. And you can actually see that in the documentary, that they're sitting there and recording themselves amongst each other. So the truth, if you want to be hard about that, about exactly what was done, or at least the data about it doesn't really exist anymore. It's too many years and maybe too many beers and too many albums ago for Fredrik Nordström to just go in and remember what the hell he did that day. Where did he put the microphone on the cab? Which amp did watch? How did he turn it in? Nah. When you look at the way he worked, no chance. So that was the bad news out of the way. I feel a little bit ambivalent about it because I think it's still fun to see what we can then find out. And I have something great to share with you because Robert had something great to share with you. What I'm about to show you had to be okay by Fredrik Nordström, but he was very kind to respond to me on Facebook with a little thumbs up when I asked him if I could show it, and he would give me that answer. So, without further ado, I present to you the inside of the cabinets that we have just looked at, and exact information about the models and the years. First of all, the Marshall cabinet is equipped with Celestion greenback speakers, and they are from January 1993. And it's probably what is called a 1960 AX cabinet, because they come with greenbacks by default. We can see they are 16 ohms and 75 hertz, and they are made in England. So that was a huge surprise to me. First of all, I mean, when I saw this, I was through the roof. That's insane for a guy that's as obsessed with this kind of stuff, or passionate, you can say. Oh my God, this was crazy. And I as someone who produces stuff at home myself and dabble around in audio recording, you tend to be so drawn towards vintage 30 speakers for metal because, yeah, you know, that's the standard metal tone. But actually, hey, here's something different that apparently also works for metal. And we are going to have a closer look at that sometime. I'm going to tell you more at the end of the video, but we are going to explore this together. Next up, we have pictures of this ENGL cabinet here, and it is from April, or it has speakers that are dated to April 17th, 1996. Which is well before Blackwater Park was recorded, and and I think just about time for Still Life, actually. So that's amazing. And what's also interesting is that they are made in the UK. The China production didn't run at the time, of course, so by default everything here is made in the UK. And they are 8 ohm Celestion Vintage 30 speakers. If you are a Vintage 30 nerd or fan, you will know about the allegedly legendary Mesa Boogie cabinets that were made, the rectifiers that were made around the 2000s, that they had some kind of special juice in them, and they also happened to be 8 ohm vintage 30s, but apparently they were like particularly legendary. But here we just see, hey, 8 ohm instead of 16. That's kind of cool. And again, super interesting if you want to go cabinet hunting. And finally, we got this shot of the Vox cabinet, which is a 1965 Vox Jennings. I didn't take the time to research what exactly these speakers are called, but maybe if someone has information on this, you can get back to me in the comments and share it with the other viewers. That would be super nice. There's a very high chance that the cleans that we hear on Blackwater Park were recorded through these speaker cabinets. So I would love to know more. Please help me out. And also the cleans on Still Life, of course. And finally, I just want to share that I bought a little ENGL cabinet. Sadly, it came with Chinese vintage 30s, so that's not good. But on the positive side, I have found 2 greenbacks to put in. So this is kind of like a bastard version of what we just saw. It's got a little bit of the ENGL DNA. It's got a little bit of the Marshall DNA. And I got a speaker that is from 2006 and a speaker that is from 1996. And I've actually measured the differences between these speakers. And I might show that in a different video. But it will come. It will come. So where are we? We have found out what is in these cabinets, and it's crazy. And if you're an Opeth fan, maybe it's time to experiment with some greenbacks if you want to nail the Still Life and Blackwater Park tones. So that's fantastic. And the next one is going to be on Damnation and Deliverance, and it's going to also have information that has never been publicly available before. So that's pretty cool too, and I look so much forward to sharing it with you. And before we go, I just want to say a huge thank you to Robert of Obsidian Recording Studios for taking the time to talk to me. If you are out there and you are looking to record something, or you are looking to mix something, or whatever you could use an experienced audio engineer for, please reach out to Robert. If you are about to record at Studio Fredman, you might also happen to meet him there, and you can say hello. So that's it for now. And yes, last time, thank you again, Robert, and see you guys next time.